Hi, I'm here with my friend Will Hess. Will, it's been a long time. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to it. We've known
yeah,
each other for so long, so I
yeah,
thought,
but I haven't seen you forever. And then like I said, I got your email and you've done documentaries. You're working on a new project and a musical, which
yeah,
can all be found on your website, which I will have, below the video on YouTube. I'll have the link to your website. But
willhess.org. Yeah.
yeah, and it's good to see you. It looks like you're in a tropical setting.
Yeah. I'm down here in St. Bart's. Wow. How beautiful.
Welcome to my podcast where I'll be speaking with guests candidly about interesting topics. So join me on Candid with Kimbra.
Will is you're a producer, a writer, a director, right?
Yeah, and I was acting in the latest one.
Oh,
So
you were? So
yeah,
you're an actor
I've
too.
I've produced a couple of documentaries and directed them and did the research, wrote them. You don't really write documentaries, but to the extent that you know you interview somebody, you have to have 100 questions. I crafted the questions which guided the subject matter we were talking about, that type.
Hmm.
But yeah, the narrative that I just finished, it's a comedy, and I wrote that one. I directed it. I acted in it, and I produced it. And as we were just talking about, I just finished the color correction phase of it. So it's really neat when you in the independent world, you have to, out of a practical necessity, you have to learn a lot of different crafts and do them. But the upside of that is if you've got the time, then you really broaden your education, value, which only benefits your next one. So for instance, when I was putting together, I did a documentary on the New Orleans Mardi Gras, looking back at 300 years of the Mardi Gras. And I remember after several years of shooting, I had shot about 150 hours. I started meeting with editors, and I put together a list of like my favorite editors who had won Oscars for editing movies, and emailed all of them and asked a bunch of them to, out to dinner and things like that. And several got back with me. Most of them I didn't hear from. But several of them got back to me, and I went out with, like Zach Steinberg, the guy who won the Oscar for the editing of The Matrix, and
Hmm.
uh, they were nice enough to sit with me and just, after hearing the pitch, they were like, this is something you should edit, it's your
Hmm.
story. And
Hmm.
I hadn't thought about it up until that point, but then looking back at it, it was the perfect thing for them to say. Because at that point, I had not edited in Adobe Premiere. I didn't
Hmm.
know the software. So
Hmm.
I taught myself Premiere, and I sat there for thousands of hours editing this piece because I had interviewed 112 people for it, and came out with about a 2 hour, 20-minute documentary. And now that I know how to use the editing software, it's only helped the new film. It, like, going forward, everything will benefit from that. So I'm really happy I did that because I had the time at that point to do it. That was also during COVID.
What it was good for was that people got to do a lot of things that they may not have had the time for to do if there was no
Yeah,
lockdown.
if they weren't locked down. Yeah, that was my creative outlet to, like, kind of fight through that, and it worked out well.
Your
So
documentaries that you do, do you do them because this is something that's interesting to you, or do you think that it's a topic that will be popular with other people, or
well,
both?
actually, yeah, both. Like, at this point, it's both, because I thought, in the case of my first documentary, it was on Stan Lee.
Hmm.
I met Stan years ago, and became friends with him, and he's got a great story. Of course, he passed away a few years ago, but his story, ultimately, the thing that jumped out to me was, I remember him. I had an office at that time in Beverly Hills, and he had an office down the street, not too far from mine. And just his cousin actually was in the same building as me, just two doors down. His
Hmm.
cousin was best known for, he directed the Willy Wonka, the original Willy Wonka.
Right.
But anyway, Stan's story of how he came out here from New York and struggled for 2 decades, 2.5 decades to get the characters, the Spider-Man and X-Men and all that into the major motion pictures. And he would always talk about how people laughed at him in the beginning and they didn't take him serious. And it wasn't until Bryan Singer's 1998, X-Men that made over 300 million, and then people started taking him serious. But to hear him talk about the little, along those 2.5 decades, I thought his story about the little successes he had along the way, which was mainly the Incredible Hulk with Lou Ferrigno in the 80s, the Nicholas Hammond played Spider-Man, that was a series on television. And of course, the Saturday morning cartoons, which I grew up watching, all three of those, right? And that sort of inspired a new generation. So into the Marvel comic superhero realm. And I just thought that story interested me because I grew up watching that, but I thought it would also have a broad appeal. So we started talking about doing his story, and there's a helicopter coming over. But I remember bringing up to him, I said they waited until Walt Disney died until they did his biography. And they waited till Jim Henson died until they did his biography. So while you're alive and you can have some say in it, let's do your story and you can give us input along the way and, that type of thing. So it worked out. I spent about 6 years on that, and Netflix had it for 2 years. It's up on Amazon right now and a handful of other places. I think if you Google it, it's, I want to say Hulu, Vudu.
So if I went on Netflix right now, I might be able to still get it. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's on Amazon right now, on Amazon Prime. Like at the end of the 2-year run, and this is actually something that was my first major documentary. I hadn't thought about this, but you learn along the way. At the end of the 2 years contract that we had with Netflix, they said to us, we'll keep it up, but we won't give you any more money. And we said, okay, we'll just take it down and let's see if we can get some other deals. So you have a life. It's almost like having a child. It's like the first run, there's life after that, Right. So what, in the broad scheme of things, PBS picked it up for a 2-year contract. Epix, which is a Viacom domestic cable, they picked it up for 3 years. Netflix had it for 2. Now we have Fox Searchlight helped with international territories. We have a wide range right now of, I would say it's about 8 or 9 AVOD platforms that it's on, which is Amazon Prime, IMDb Movies, YouTube, Vudu, Hulu, all of those. But do you know what AVOD is? It's basically, I've been a member of Netflix since I was in undergrad. I did undergrad at LSU in Baton Rouge. And I remember back then they mailed you the DVD, but that is called SVOD. That's a subscription video on demand, right? Even though they've switched from the DVDs, which they actually still do, but it's all like you subscribe, you pay them a monthly fee. I think it's $15 a month now, and you can access their library online. But that's the way it's been since I was at LSU. Now everything is moving towards the AVOD platforms, which Tubi is owned by 20th Century Fox. They have AVOD, which stands for Advertising Video on Demand. So they do the same thing, except you don't pay, it's free. So it's like going back to the old television format where you watch as long as you're willing to put up with some commercials, because every like 12 minutes, there's 1 or 2 commercials inserted into your media. So that's, it's enabled like the Stanley documentary that I did. It's called With Great Power, the Stanley Story. That is on Amazon right now, and people watch it. Every time a new movie comes out, like that's a Marvel film, we look at the analytics and we can tell like people are Googling Stanley's name, and it's sort of a renewed interest, if you will.
So did you do, not to get too personal, but did you do pretty well financially with the Stanley thing? I mean, after all is said and done, I mean.
We did okay. What helped it is it's what they call an evergreen documentary, right. Which is actually the same with the Mardi Gras doc, because Mardi Gras happens annually. It's constantly, Mardi Gras is constantly in the public eye because there's 1 million people go every year for
Mhm.
as tourists to enjoy it. But if you can contemplate all the millions that have gone in the past and all the millions that have it on a bucket list to go in the future, when they're sitting there flipping through, looking at the thumbnails on any of these AVOD platforms, whether it's Tubi or Prime, Amazon Prime, they're gonna look at that and be like, oh, the New Orleans Mardi Gras doc, yeah, I want to go there. And who knows, it might help enable them uh, to think about like buying a ticket and heading down, something they see in that. But with the Stanley doc, like I was saying, it's like every time a new Marvel, we are kind of in that Marvel age.
Sure.
And we do notice every time a new Marvel film comes out, the analytics indicate that people Google Stanley's name, they find, his first writing assignment was Captain America, which
Right.
Joe Simon, but what's really amazing is in that time frame that he took, he changed the name from Timely Comics to Marvel Comics, and they weren't doing so well, and he brought them out of the doldrums. And at that time, the Cadillac of the industry was DC Comics, so he brought Marvel up to the point where it surpassed DC. And at that point, that's when he decided to leave New York and come out and pursue getting them into movies, which took 20 years. But in that time frame, there's 532 characters that he's associated with, that he created with the artist, like, came up with the material. And
Sure. I know there was a little bit of I have a friend who's really into two guys I know are really into Stanley, Jeff
Mhm.
Kirshner, Frank Schneider,
Mhm.
wherever you are. And and my friend was saying that Stan had there's been a little bit of controversy. Some people are saying he didn't create, and there's been a little bit
Yeah.
of that, right?
Yeah, that drum has been beat many times, that's for
Oh,
sure. And the thing is, it's not that he didn't create, but you don't want to take away from the artist either.
sure.
The artist, it really is what came first, the chicken or the egg.
Yes.
Like, Dan was the writer. He didn't
Sure.
draw.
Right.
His brother Larry is a very talented artist, and he's
Right.
drawn Spider-Man for years. But Stan was never an artist, and he wrote the comics, and he set up the Marvel system and he worked with great artists like John Romita and Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and Larry Lieber, his brother, and all these guys. And they just cranked it out. It was like Stan's writing his story plus his salesmanship, because he was
Sure.
the
Sure.
way he set everything up and promoted Marvel and pushed it.
Kind of like being a producer too of a film. Like a producer is the one that gets it all together. So
And he had his method of, like, he went to colleges and he spoke to the young kids, and they set up fan clubs, the Mary Marvel Marching Society. Like, he really reached out. He did something that was very smart. He reached out to people in the same way that you see people, like with your podcast, you're reaching out to audiences, right? Trying to share information. That's basically, imagine trying to do that before the internet and before,
right.
like, where you just had a comic book which came out, and on the last page you put, here's a image of the Mary Marvel Marching Society, send a self-addressed stamped envelope to, blah blah blah. It's so he was like doing something unique there, and working with all the artists. And I know there was actually a lawsuit which I studied in class last year,
Hmm.
which was with Jack Kirby and Marvel, against Marvel, and they had an undisclosed settlement agreement, because with the creation of all these characters, I think, there's a lot of ambiguity that it doesn't necessarily matter for most instances, but once something, nobody really expected Marvel to, I
Check
guess,
off.
become what it became, right?
Right.
So the paperwork wasn't always,
Sure.
as sharp as it should have been. But to their credit, Marvel, I think, has been really good with, giving the executive producer credits for Kirby and Lee, and remembering, their heritage and their roots and where they came from. And I don't think there's any shortage of respect for the artist out there. And you see that when, I went to Comic-Con many times with Stan in San Diego and Atlanta and New York and Utah and Vegas, and just LA Comic-Con. And you saw just, him reacting with the various artists. And so I always look at it as like they needed each other.
Sure.
That you know, the way to look at it. But
Well, yeah, that happens. It's even like with songwriting, sometimes when you got the lyrics and you got the music, it's like together. Sometimes one person will have a little bit more input on one, but it's generally better to like share, you know.
yeah. And I know, keeping in mind that, and this is one of the reasons I'm going to law school, because I know that there are instances where people get screwed over. And there's
True.
whether the artist is, I just read a case the other day, Prince, the artist
Sure.
formerly known as Prince, he signed a contract in his early years that said that the company that was financing him basically owned everything. They owned his name, they owned his likeness, they owned, which is why he changed to
Yeah.
is formerly known as Prince. They owned his music. And so he was in the situation where even at a certain point when he broke away, he said, well, the company told him, look, you can sing those songs only if you license them from us, because
Right.
we own them. So it's, that I don't consider a fair arrangement,
Right.
but
No, yeah, actually I knew someone that worked for Benny Medina and Warner Brothers at the time that Prince was there, and he's the one that told me that story too. He was like, Prince changed his name to the Symbol, because that way he could re-record his own music under the Symbol name. But then once he got it back, he probably, went back to Prince. But that's speaking of law school. So you said it's your fifth semester. So how many more semesters do you have? Do you know?
yeah. You need, in order to sit for the California State Bar, you need 90 units. So,
Okay.
at this point, like the way I'm doing it, because I work also, I'm doing law school part-time while
Sure.
I work, but I'm juggling projects and different things. So it's going to take me 10 semesters. So I'm 40% of the way through. Like I'm starting like this Christmas, I'm going to Greece for Christmas. I'll be
Wow.
looking back at I'll be at the halfway point.
Oh,
Uh,
that's great. Well,
so
I'm so what's the word? Impressed by you that you're doing that because my aunt's always saying that to me too. She's like, I'd rather be paying you than this lawyer. You're good at law. she's like, go back to law school, and I'm like, oh my God, you know.
go back. Did you start?
Well, no, she just meant go to law school,
Go
not
back, go
go
back to
back to
school.
school,
Like
like be a lawyer. And I'm like, oh
it's
God.
never too late. I mean, I went to USC. I got a master's in cinema production, and I never thought that I was going to end up going to law school, to be honest. And I was producing and directing and doing things, but it just came, when it really dawned on me that I should start seriously thinking of law school is when I was working on the Stan Lee documentary, and I had like I submitted it to the film festivals, and it did pretty good on the festivals. It played in like 26 film festivals. And I got to go out and meet a lot of filmmakers at the different, I did Q&As at the different festivals. And one of the guys I met was Morgan Spurlock. And at the time, he was trying to get Super Size Me out. And
Oh,
McDonald's, he was under lawsuits. They were trying to
sure.
suppress his story and keep it off the market. And he directed me to his attorney in Beverly Hills that was good with fair use. And I remember one of the not to get too far down into the weeds, but one Sunday afternoon we were over at Stan's. We were filming him and his wife, Joan. They were married for 70 years, right? And
Oh,
they
wow.
were reflecting back on the old days in Long Island and back in New York. And it was just a shared Sunday afternoon there where she was talking about their first child who died 3 days after being born, named Jan. And
Mhm.
she was crying, and it was a touching moment
Oh,
between the two.
wow.
And I wanted to keep that in the doc. And I would say halfway through that scene, she reaches over and she turns on a radio as she's talking.
Oh,
And
no.
it's got the girl from Ipanema, the Frank
Yeah.
Sinatra song, playing in the background. And I had contacted the Frank Sinatra Foundation and asked, I said, look, this is like gold here. I want to use this. It's about 30, maybe 45 seconds. I want to use that in the doc. And they were, I said, we don't have a music licensing budget. Can we get it pro bono? And they said, no, but we'll give it to you for 75,000. And
What?
I was like, okay, well, I basically resigned in my mind. We're not going to be able to do it. We're going to have to take it out. But I remember when I went to the attorney's office and we were sitting there. One of the first steps you do is you show him what you have, and he sits there with his yellow pad and makes notes with the time code and all that. And we went shot by shot and looked at everything. And when we got to that shot, I said, I'm going to have to take this music out. We don't own the rights. And he's like, no, you can keep that. It's covered under the fair use laws. And I was like, why? And he's like, well, because she turned the radio on and you were documenting it. You didn't mix it in post-production.
Oh.
It's part of the environment you were documenting, you see? And that's when it really shuttered on me. I opened my mind to like, the more you know legally, the better off your projects are going to be.
It's so interesting. And that's true, right? You kept it in?
We kept it in, but there's parameters for fair use. And the main things to take away from it is you have a set time limit. You can't like take the whole song. You can't take the whole movie. Like in that particular movie, like with Great Power, we used movie clips from the Marvel films, from Spider-Man and whatnot, and X-Men and Hulk. But we didn't take the whole clip or the whole scene. We would take like 10 seconds, as long as Stan was talking about Spider-Man and that clip of Tobey Maguire, let's say, supported visually what he was talking about, then and it wasn't degrading the character, then those parameters, then it works. There's a 10-second, 20-second clip, whatever. So those are the things they're looking at in fair use, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah. The other podcast I was doing before, I did a podcast for a couple of years, and we were constantly questioning that, like, can we use that? Can we, and we didn't have a lawyer looking it up for us. So we used to mostly take things out because we were always afraid,
Yeah. Well, that's funny because that's, I think, what a lot of people do. They self-censor, and it's like, but if I remember, we got lucky because in that particular case, somebody told me after the fact that Disney is very difficult. Like, they ended up buying Marvel, and they said that they're very difficult when it comes to licensing movie clips. But as it turns out, we got in there right before Disney bought Marvel. It was before they bought Luke.
You got lucky there, huh?
Yeah, so we did everything with Marvel, so like all the clips, and it was all pure promotional for them, and it was painting them in a good light, and just promoting the characters. So it was nothing for them to be concerned about. But in the end, it just showed their roots and heritage and that type of thing. So
I remember I went to maybe it was a screening that you had in Westwood of the Stan Lee doc. I don't know if that was the first time you were showing it, but it was really good. I remember at the end showing him and his wife talking too. It was seemed like it was sort of at the end of the movie. But
I think that was on Wilshire Boulevard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was, I like that theater. I forget the name of it, but
I remember
where
that.
Marilyn Monroe is buried behind the theater. And,
that's right. She is buried in Westwood. That's true. Yeah, that's so interesting. You're a wealth of knowledge of movie trivia, Will.
Yeah, most neighborhoods around LA have something about them, but
I wanted to start doing, that was another idea I had, like going to in places that people don't normally know about in LA and showing them. I've done a little bit so far with this podcast, but I want to do more.
You could go to Beverly Hills to the old Beverly Hillbillies house.
No, that's a good. I should do that one. And then what's the one? The Brady Bunch.
The Brady Bunch house is in Toluca Lake, or the house from E.T. It's out near Northridge.
I'll go to all the movie and TV star homes, right? That were used.
I like doing that. Yeah, it's fun.
A friend of mine brought me. She lives near the Brady Bunch one, and she showed. And there's like a security guard that sits out front.
Yeah,
I think it was.
There was the place where James Dean died. It's about an hour and a half north of Los Angeles. It's so crazy, but like that's one place I went and kind of paid homage. It's funny. It's just a cow pasture, and it's one highway. The state highway is turning. It's a curve. He just happened to be in a Porsche Boxster that he took that curve too fast and it rolled, and it didn't have a bar.
I thought I was always told that somebody pulled out and didn't see him, but you're saying he turned and rolled.
Yeah, there's no place to turn out there. It's a cow pasture, but and people go there and they leave messages in bottles. Like there's hundreds of bottles there, like up near the cow fence, like the just love notes to James Dean. It's pretty.
So I don't know if you know this about James Dean. The farmer's market, okay, one of my friends' family owned this Italian restaurant. I believe it's where the farmer's market is, where the Grove is, but it's that original part.
Yeah.
And he used to go and have Italian dinners at this restaurant because he was dating Pierre Angeli. And
It's
he
not Buca de Beppa, is it?
no. It's my friend's last name is D'Amore, D apostrophe A Amore, but I think it was called Amores or something. I'll find out the exact name. But yeah, I always find old Hollywood history fascinating. But it seems like you're really a big movie fan. So were you studying
Yeah.
cinema as an undergrad, or what was your major in college when you were back in Louisiana?
History, but I've done a half a dozen screenwriting classes. I did some
Oh,
screenwriting classes in undergrad at Louisiana State, and
oh.
I took, of course, several in at USC in film school. But my goal long term has always been, because I enjoy reading history. I enjoy documentaries, and I've basically, I long term, my goal is to make history narratives, because those are my favorite films,
Mm,
right? They happen to be the most expensive, but
mm,
if you think about movies like Glory, Denzel
mhm,
Washington, back in the days,
mhm, mhm,
um, Matthew Broderick,
mhm.
Braveheart, Titanic, any historical happening, and then set it into a dramatic setting. It's like those, I always enjoy those a lot. Um, I guess the most recent in our summertime is Oppenheimer,
Oh yeah,
kind of
that was
a
good.
retelling of that. But that's I think what also got me into documentary, because it's documentary is a cheaper way of telling a historical thing, and I'm researching several different subject matters right now for documentaries that I want to do in the future.
So,
That
so to be
yeah,
called, you'd like to be called a documentarian, right?
yeah,
Documentarian.
documentarian slash filmmaker, but I kind of lump it all together. But it's I have a love for both, but this that's why I kind of like this new comedy, that it's actually a comedy, it's a musical, it's a
Oh yeah, I saw that on your website. I was going to ask you about that.
I'm
Music.
merging multiple genres together. There's dramatic moments in it. It's got a
So,
little bit for everybody.
what is this project, this new one that you're talking about?
It's called Barely Love, a Bear Mauling love story musical, and it's based on this idea that 9 UCLA kids, they go camping up in Big Bear over spring break, and think in the line along the line of Cocaine Bear, like they have their love problems, they have their addiction problems.
Sure.
The bear gets in while they're out swimming and having fun hiking. The bear gets into their stuff and roots around in the camp and gets in. One guy has ayahuasca. One girl is on diet caffeine pills and beer and whatnot. He gets into it all, eats it, darts off, and comes back later and starts mauling them all one by one. And there's 11 songs throughout. So I play Ranger Rick. Ranger Rick comes to save the day. I
I
have a
come to
couple
save
of
the
songs.
day.
I sing a couple of songs, but yeah, it was just something for fun. Like, I actually wrote a 5-minute short when I was at USC, and it was
Okay.
called Barely Love. And I did one scene, you could say, basically. So I did the very first version of it and storyboarded it out and all that, and we shot that up in Big Bear back when I was in film school, but I always had been sitting on this idea of expanding it into a feature. And,
Hmm.
and so over the several past few years, I wrote it out into a longer form feature. It's not in the original 5-minute short. It's just one couple that ends
Hmm.
up going up there. And now we have 4 couples basically. And, it's a cast of 20. They go up, and I always thought if it works, and then I've got ideas for sequels. Like, this is set in Big Bear. It's a grizzly, a brown grizzly. The sequel is Barely Love, The Lovin' Continues. Barely Love 2, The Lovin' Continues, and that'll be a black bear in Lake Havasu.
That's
And
funny.
Barely Love 3, What's Love Got to Do with It? That's set in Alaska with a polar bear. So
Oh yeah, and you go to Alaska a lot. Is that you must like Alaska,
yeah,
right?
I'm actually going to go there Friday. I'm going to do
That's right.
salmon
Yeah.
fish. So I try to get up there because I have family there about an hour north of Anchorage. So I get
Mhm.
up there, I try to get up every August to do some salmon fishing.
Well, just from the little I know of you, you're a Renaissance man.
Uh, I try.
Do you still play the trumpet?
No, no, I
Oh.
do not. But I'm, that was like, I'm very happy that I had that opportunity, that moment in life to like grow up in New Orleans. And I go back every year and try to, I live in Los Angeles, but I go back as often as I can,
Mhm.
whether just, I don't know, there's something that you keep with you your whole life, obviously, wherever you grow up,
Mhm.
home is always with you.
Mhm.
But I coming out here, I look back at that moment and I think how lucky I was to have the opportunity to grow up playing trumpet in New Orleans. It's like, and I didn't, it's something you kind of take for granted. Maybe for a lot of kids, you probably have times where you take things for granted that you didn't realize was at that time important in terms of developing you. But I do credit that um, sort of musical upbringing with a lot of it taps into creative sides to you, that
Well,
enable
what a great. How old were you when you moved there to Baton Rouge? Is it Baton Rouge or Baton Rouge?
uh it's whatever you want. I call it Baton Rouge, but I
Okay.
mean, I was born in Dallas, in the same hospital where John F. Kennedy was taken, Parkland. I was born, that's where he officially was
Past.
pronounced
Yeah.
dead. And then 2 days later, Lee Harvey Oswald was pronounced dead there. But I was at the age of 2, we moved uh, up to, my dad worked in the uh, oil business, and we went to Missouri, and we were uh, there for a few years. And it was 4th grade when we left Missouri. I started in 5th grade down in New Orleans and
Mhm.
grew up the rest of, but my time there. And then, when I finished high school, I did undergrad in I actually started at Louisiana Tech. I don't know if you've heard of the Bulldogs, but Louisiana Tech, their I guess big Hall of Famer was Terry Bradshaw.
Yeah, I've
But
heard of the Bulldog, sure.
and I did 2 years there, and then I transferred down to Louisiana State, which is in Baton Rouge. It's beautiful, the lakes, the live oaks. Those trees are like 400 years old. It's a beautiful
It
area.
seems like a great place to grow up. Now, did you move out here to go to grad school, or you were already here and then you went to USC?
Well, initially I moved out here with the goal of going to grad school for film. And to be honest, I didn't know about USC.
Mm.
I, my goal initially when I was leaving Baton Rouge was to apply to UCLA, which I did. And I applied to their graduate program to UCLA. And, I came out and I found out about USC. I
Mm.
applied to that program as well. And funny story, I got turned down by both of them, right? The first go around. So at that point, I was writing my first feature. It was called Bill the Intern, and it was a comedy. I loved that movie Mike Judge did years ago called Office Space.
Mm.
And I thought it would be funny to make a comedy making fun of like sort of the office intern, that type of thing. And I had a lot of experience with that because at that time in my life, I was interning for my favorite film directors. Like my first internship was with a producer in Century City named Maury Eisenman, who he went to film school in New York at NYU.
Mhm.
Uh, he had produced the Christopher Walken movie, Suicide Kings.
Okay.
And when my internship with him was through, he connected me to a former classmate of his and a friend of his, Oliver Stone, who also went to NYU. And I went over to Illusion, and I was interning at Illusion in Santa Monica. That's Oliver Stone's production company.
Is it still now? Does they still have Illusion?
Illusion is not there. I'm sure the LLC is still set up, but
Mm.
they don't have offices. Oliver Stone lives in New York, if I remember correctly now.
Okay.
And for a while, I think he was living in France. But at that time, I was interning there. And
Mhm.
then when that internship ended, I went down the street and interned for James Cameron at Lightstorm.
Hmm.
And I was there for a little bit. That was in the post-Titanic phase. He hadn't,
Okay.
like, he was just coming off of that high and starting to prep for Avatar. And I did that. I started interning for George Lucas at Lucasfilm up in Marin County
Hmm.
and up at Skywalker. After that, I came back and I interned for Roger Corman at Concord New Horizon. And are you familiar with Roger Corman?
Oh, sure. I did the first movie I ever did, low budget movie that I was an actor on. We used
Was
his,
with Roger?
well, no, but we used his studio. It was they rented
Okay.
it, right? But it was so like, it would be like your closet was my dressing room, so low
Well,
budget,
I had a lot of fun, I think, with the internships. And I thought, like, as I was writing that comedy, I thought I would kind of tap into some of those experiences and just make fun of the Hollywood intern experience. But as one side effect of all of those internships, after I finished that phase and I reapplied to the graduate program, I got accepted at USC the second go around. But George Lucas had just given hundreds of millions of dollars to the film program, and I
Mhm.
had letters. I received letters of reference from George Lucas and from James Cameron, from all the places I had interned, all over Stone's
Mm.
company, and that helped. And that was like a just kind of a reminder, like it's not,
It's who you know. No, I'm kidding.
I think it's about money. A lot of it is about money, being in the right spot at the right time, having a little bit of luck. Yeah, it all, there's like
But still, USC is expensive. I mean, you didn't get a scholarship, right? Did you? Did you?
no, I didn't. I did not. And that is like I borrowed to do it. I borrowed loans to do it. And which is actually what has motivated me in this phase in law school. I'm not borrowing any loans. I'm sort of
Good.
approaching it the other way. I would be moving faster through it if I was, but I decided I would work and pay as I go, sort of pay to play, if you will.
Yeah, I know. I know. You're probably, smart to do because I have a friend who never, he's like late 40s, he never paid his student loan and it's huge. It's like,
I don't want to, like, I just don't want to carry more debt. And I thought, it'd be a great feeling to be sitting for the bar, May of 27, not having to worry about like a
mm,
massive loan, so I'm going to do it that way. But, I need the time. I take off the summers so I can write and think and just kind of breathe. Even though I'm still working, it's like I'm just finishing the 10 weeks of summer this time. We start back, I'll be doing evidence and
but at the same time, even though, you're doing it this way, you're learning so much every semester,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, and long term, I would like to practice entertainment law. So that primarily boils down to contracts and employment law. So
Sure.
it's merging the
I'm sure I
two.
can give you a lot of business. So
Okay,
I'm
we'll
sure.
keep in touch. Let's do lunch.
Yes, we will. No, but I have so many, like I have a friend, I told you on the phone before we start doing this Zoom with that my friend, she has this movie made about her life, but they changed the names. But I get stuff all the time, like, even myself, I'm always, have questions about things I'm doing. So it's good to know a lawyer, dentist, lawyer, plumber. No, I'm kidding.
Accountant.
Accountant. I do have a really good accountant. If you ever need one, I have a really good one. He specializes in the entertainment business, and he's a really nice.
I just use TurboTax.
Oh yeah, you do it yourself. I'm like such a baby. I'm like I send it to my, even though mine's always pretty much the same for the last few years. It's like I feel better that he does it because then I don't feel like my mom always said to me, don't mess around with Uncle Sam, So I want to make sure everything is,
Well, that's how they always get you. Like
I know Al Capone or whoever it was.
even Edwin Edwards, the former Louisiana governor, like they went after him for years and they couldn't get him, and they finally got him on tax evasion. It's like
I know. I just
time in a federal penitentiary in Dallas. That's but
I mean, even if Martha Stewart would, no, hers wasn't tax evasion. Hers was like insider trading or something, right?
yeah, it was. But they can always. I think it's, and I'm sure I'm not the greatest at TurboTax, but if you click on the wrong button years later, they can come back and get you. Oh, we got you there, and like so I just do what the best I can. You get the nice thing about going to law school is you got a lot of write-offs, right? You can
That's
write off
true.
things. And
Where
also you're doing your film and your whatever documentary expenses, like Dropbox, is a monthly
to write
cost.
off?
So
Where are you going to law school? Are you doing it in a classroom?
it's a class, or it's a school named Trinity. It's in Santa Ana, California, and
Oh,
they do offer in-person classes, but you can do the same online. You can do the
hmm.
classes online too. So some people do them online, some people do them in person, but they're originally based out of Chicago, and
Mhm.
they've been. I liked this fact that the school had been around over 100 years. It's
Is it a religious school like with the name Trinity?
it's an Episcopalian, I want to say Methodist background.
Ah,
If
okay.
it is a Christian university
Hmm.
school, they have a nursing program, and
Hmm.
I want to say that's in Florida, but the mother campus is in Chicago, and they've been around
Okay.
over 100 years. And the law school is in Orange County. So
Oh,
I
cool.
I liked, I had a friend who was doing their LLM there, and they mentioned, I didn't even know about them until my friend mentioned it to me, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm working on my LLM there." And I thought, well, that's neat. Maybe I should check into that and see what their JD program is like. So,
And so far you like them. So far you like
I
them.
do, yeah. Everybody is super nice there, and I've been, um, it's what I like are the small class sizes, and
Sure.
you get interaction time with the professors. One nice thing about the professors is they're all working attorneys, which can have its good side and bad side depending on if they're in court. But I feel my overall experience so far is, even though they can get busy too with their own practices, they're also, they make themselves available to talk to you and really kind of explain things to you. And I would rather, like, I kind of went through this when I went to film school. You might have a professor who's never made a film in their life, or made a couple of films that never got distribution or something like that, who's teaching one class. And then you can have another class which has maybe a guest lecturer for that semester who's
Hmm.
got 50 films that's
Hmm.
been out and distributed. And it's just different. You kind of get different styles from either or. Both have, something they can contribute to your overall learning, but it's the same with, I personally like the fact that the professors are involved in actual practice of
Yeah, they're
litigation.
practicing now. I
Yeah.
just had a thought though. It scared me because, we're talking about going back to law school, and how about the bar though? Are you scared of taking the bar?
No, but it'll be my biggest challenge. Like right now, like I said, I'm 4 semesters in. So I've had 4 semesters where I've done midterms, and our midterms and our finals, the midterm is 1 hour. The final is, depending on the class, it could be 2 to 3 hours.
Mhm.
But that's as big as it's going to get for the 10 semesters. When I sit for the bar, that's a multi-day event, and that's going to be,
Yeah.
there's basically out as it's gonna looking right now, I'll graduate in May of 27, walk, receive the JD, the Juris Doctorate,
Mhm.
and then jump immediately. I'm planning on doing a Barbary prep class. And in California, they offer the bar. You can sit for it twice a year. I believe it's July and February. So I'll have like a 7 to 8 weeks to study with Barbary to prep for the class, or the July offering. So
Mhm.
that's what and then I'll go to Japan or something for a
To
holiday.
celebrate.
Yeah, just to celebrate whether, I mean, I don't know if you know this, but California's bar passage rate is low. It's like
Oh
40%.
yeah. I always heard because
And
I always heard that California and New York were the hardest bar tests, right?
think I think that's true. And I think Massachusetts specifically, because it's older, right? And
More
or one of
pronounced.
the oldest parts of the country. So they've got longer precedents, longer case
Yeah.
precedents. And
Um,
but wherever you have as many people, like in California, there's 38 million people. So you have a lot of law, a lot
yeah.
of need for it. So it's, yeah, I think that's one of the reasons. And same thing with Florida, same thing with Texas. They're but you know what's interesting is like once passing the California bar, I am going to be looking at other states because I'd like to be
Hey,
multi.
guess what? Guess what? My friend who is a lawyer in one state, and that is Louisiana, and she told me that Louisiana is very easy to pass.
Is it?
That's
Okay.
what she
Does
said.
that,
You know.
I I definitely want to sit for the bar there. The distinction with that is the rest of the 49 states are under common law, and Louisiana was founded by the French. They're under Napoleonic
Oh,
code.
maybe that's why. Yeah, Napoleon. Yeah, I remember that scene from Streetcar Named Desire where Marlon Brando goes, "You're from. Are you familiar with the Napoleonic Code? Whatever's whatever is the wife has belongs to the husband."
Yeah, and I mean, there's distinctions like property rights and things like
Right,
that. There's maritime laws are different down
right.
there. It's a lot of interesting things. But one of the things I go into in the Mardi Gras doc is there's a law on the books. We talk about how Mardi Gras is governed and what
Mhm,
laws there are. And the city of New Orleans has a Mardi Gras code, right?
mhm, mhm,
That you one of the major codes that they actually enforce is it's considered a non-commercial event. Like they don't want this to become like,
mhm.
the Gatorade Mardi Gras, like, or
Sure,
it's
sure.
not going to bring in sponsors. It's put on by the citizens of New Orleans and for the people of New Orleans. So anyway, there's I remember just reading that code, and this code was written over 100. It's been developing as we go, but they
Right.
started writing it over 100 years ago. But there's one that says you can't bring reptiles to the parade route within 3 hours of the start of the parade. And I looked into that, and it's because somebody brought an alligator to the parade on a chain and walked him like a dog, and like apparently he got into a fight with like his alligator got into a fight with a dog.
I think it's a pretty good rule or,
Yeah,
or law.
no reptiles. Yeah. So it's every law originated somewhere, and it started because of an incident, most likely that after that they said, it's not a good idea, we should make a law about it, not
So you're going to do entertainment law, hopefully, right? So I guess entertainment law would be it's more complicated, I would think, in California, but maybe it's the same in every state. I'm not sure.
well, you know what I would love to do if I have the opportunity. It's entertainment law, but also I enjoyed that movie Aaron Brockovich, and I really love RFK Jr. His trajectory of like over 500 cases in the Hudson Valley doing environmental law and just fighting for a cleaner environment. I like that, and so if I have the opportunity, I would like to pursue environmental law cases. And I don't think
That's
there's a
very noble of you. And
I
that's
think it would be like that would feel like you're doing something, you're giving something back. And maybe also tap into defamation cases, because I think there's a lot of defamation cases out there today, and
that's
that
true. You probably get a lot of work that way.
I
Hey,
think that, and licensing, and just the IP theft is so rampant.
oh yeah, for sure.
So,
That's tough.
that would all fall, I guess, under the umbrella of entertainment law. But that's sort of where I see myself, practicing. But,
Okay, so I just wanted to recap by saying you've got the Stan Lee doc, which is people can see that on Amazon, right?
yeah, yeah.
And what's the full title of that again?
That's called With Great Power, the Stanley Story.
Right.
And
And
yeah.
then the other one, the King Cake.
King Cake is called King Cake, the New Orleans Mardi Gras Story. I've released on my YouTube channel 8 scenes so far. I'm still talking to distributors for that one. I don't have a distribution deal locked down. I had one company that was wanting me to sign an 11-year contract, and I don't want to sign that. Like the longest we've ever had was 5 years. I don't want to sign an 11.
Sure.
So I walked away from that. But
And then you've got this bear musical thing you're doing, the bear
yeah,
musical.
that is the most recent thing. And my goal with that is to have it completely done over the next month, and in time for, like, I'll begin later as the fall progresses submitting to film festivals. I'm going to put together a screening here in Los Angeles somewhere and invite the cast and the crew and have them come out and watch it. And it's from their perspective, I get emails from them on a regular basis. Hey, can I get some footage for my reel?
Sure, of course.
I've been very selective. I don't want to like give out uncolored footage or
Sure.
footage without VFX. So I've been holding on to it tight, and I know they're chomping at the bit to get some. So anyway, it's going to be nice closure for everybody because we've been involved on it together for a while now. So,
Okay.
but whoever ends up helping me take that out, I'm hoping to do a 2-for-1 deal, maybe deal with the Mardi Gras doc in that regard. And I think it's probably going to be easier to find a narrative distributor than documentary, distributor. I don't, I just feel like there's more of them out there. So
Wow. I mean, you got a lot of stuff going on, and I really admire your tenacity. I thought I was tenacious, but I think you're
uh,
you're like tenacious D, but you're tenacious W.
well, that old saying, the last one standing. It's like, you just stick around and keep doing it. And like, I've got ideas for docs and feature films, and I'm gonna, I have friends that are inspirational about wanting to be involved and be a part of it and do it. And like, there's a friend of mine that I'll be producing on his feature. We're going to put together later this fall. He's going to be shooting in part of it here in LA, part in Chicago. And it's got, you know who Mike Starr is? He's an actor who has made a living as a character actor. He was in movies like Johnny Depp's Ed Wood.
Oh, okay.
He was in Dumb and Dumber with Jim Carrey.
Okay. I'm
He's
sure
in
I'd recognize him if I saw him.
Goodfellas. Yeah. He's one of those guys you know because you've seen in 100 movies. But the interesting thing is he's never starred in a feature in terms of like he's always been the supporting actor or
Sure.
So a buddy of mine is friends with him and recently offered him, he wrote a role for him and offered him the role and he accepted. He loved the script and the plan is to shoot it later this fall. He asked me to produce it for him. So that we're going to be moving forward on. But
That's
I'm
awesome.
excited to see him because he's got another whole side of him. You normally see him as like sort of in Goodfellas, he's the gangster guy, but in this one, it's sort of a softer side of him, and it's for an audience that is not catered to as much, which is the older crowd. I mean, Mike's 70, I believe now, and it's like the prime movie audience is what 18 to 24, maybe up to 36, but they really go after the youth. So that's I think what makes hits like remember the Bill Murray film where he goes to Tokyo and
Yes.
whatever that was.
Yeah, with what's her name? With the S.
That was a hit. That was big. That was because I think it tapped into like the older market that like people. So in this case, it's like a softer
Scarlett
side of
Johansson, that's her name. I was thinking.
Scarlett Johansson. And but that's in this case, it's like Mike reflecting back on lost love, like the character he plays. It's like an old high school sweetheart and that type of thing. So
Yeah,
it's
and they say there's the what is it, the baby boomers, they're the biggest demographics, right? And people are not having kids as much, so there's more older people than there's younger people. So maybe
yeah. And if you tap into that market, like I think the movie The Notebook, it did really well, right? And a lot of it was I think the older crowd just watching it because I mean, if you think about the core of that movie, it was a reflective movie on past love and
one person had Alzheimer's or
yeah.
she had
Yeah.
Alzheimer's. Yeah, that's true.
If you ever get a chance, watch a documentary called Echo in the Canyon, which is all about like the Laurel Canyon during the 60s and 70s. It was
Oh
like
yeah,
a
I love that period.
like all these musicians lived there from the Beach Boys to the Tom Petty.
Sure. I love that. That's a fascinating time period. My dad was into all that. My dad came to LA in the 60s, so he was very knowledgeable about that stuff.
And they all influenced each other. They would walk to each other's house and just jam and like, hey man, listen to this.
Yeah, I know. I was just the person before you that I was talking to. His name's Michael Blum. He's a producer also and a musician, and he just got married. And I was teasing him. I go, "You're in Lori's house is kind of like what I heard that Mama Cass Elliot from those little Cannon days. It's kind of like
office. Yeah.
yeah, because they're always one day you should come up and he calls it jam night. We do this. He has a music studio above his garage, and
Okay.
we jam. I said your house now has become sort of like that. How Mama Cass I heard she was, where she'd introduce people. It's a real networking place.
Networking place. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It
Well,
turns out friendships, but then they end up maybe something happens. So I know you have your website, and what is it again? What's your website? I'm going to put it below.
Yeah, it's just my name. It's willhess.org. Just
Mhm.
WILLHESS.org. That people can, if they're interested, they can, follow me and get in touch with me there. And as I was mentioning to you, I don't know when I'm going to have time to do this, but I'm on top of everything else. I love that you're doing your podcast, and
Oh
been
yeah, you
thinking
want to do one.
I've been thinking about doing one for a while, and I just thought, I've got a fun name for it, and I think it'd be fun to because
But don't
I
say it so no one will take it.
no, I won't, but I do, I enjoy podcast a lot. I watch,
Sure.
and get a lot of, information from, because there's a lot of, I mean, if you ever watched anything like by Graham Hancock on ancient civilizations, for
Mhm.
instance, there's a lot of, I think he's got a documentary on Netflix right now, but if, there's a lot of really, I think, neat information, like, on Göbekli Tepe, for instance. That's a site in Turkey that's 50,000 years old. And
Mhm.
if you know what's the basic message that is pushed out by the main,
Mainstream media.
not mainstream media, but I remember in college, I was taking history classes, and the main story of humanity, let's
Oh.
say,
Mhm.
uh, man is 6,500 years old, no more.
Mhm.
The first book, which I have back here on my shelf, it was the Epic of Gilgamesh, written by the Sumerian culture. It was written in ancient Sumer. That was the first writing, and it developed out of the trade up and down the river Euphrates. And the Sumer culture, which is only 6,500 years old, was the beginning of it all, let's say.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the framework. But then you see these, documentaries like done by Graham Hancock and others that talk about, well, here's a site, we just carbon dated it, and Göbekli Tepe is over 50,000 years old. So it offers, there's evidence here that humanity, existed prior to that. It's just, it wasn't, most likely it just wasn't recorded. It's like, because
That's
they
funny you
do,
should say that. I was just listening to a Joe Rogan podcast today with Elon Musk because he was promoting his new truck basically, but um,
yeah.
they were talking about that too, the Sumerian culture and all that.
Yeah, I like Rogan. He's into all that too. But like, it's not. It's if anything, I guess you could credit the ancient Sumer culture with recording, and they baked tablets
True.
of
First one
clay,
that documented it.
came up with their code, and started recording it. But maybe, for all we know, humanity existed 100,000 years before that, and it just wasn't written down. The written word was. But that's what's neat about this podcast, because long after we're gone, it'll live on the
Yeah,
ether,
people
in the
say
internet.
that Will guy,
Uh,
that Kimbra girl. Anyway, it was great seeing you again, and I just want to say, huh?
I said, good luck with everything. And how long have you been doing your podcast for?
This was like this is number 7. Yeah, but I did it for 2 years during COVID and a year after with another friend of mine. We got pretty good subscriber list, and but then she got busy with stuff and I got busy. But now I miss it and I really like doing it. It's a lot more work on my own, but at least I can do it exactly the way I want to do it.
Yeah, and you get a chance to meet and talk with people that you probably would never have had the
Yeah,
opportunity.
exactly. Like you and I haven't seen you forever, and so when I got your email about, I think it was the Mardi Gras documentary, and I was like, wow, Will's doing all this stuff. And but anyway, so then when I was doing this podcast, I thought of you. I thought, well,
The oldest, not actor, but the oldest Mardi Gras king that I
Mhm.
have in King Cake is an actor that I grew up watching on TV in Happy Days. He played the Fonz. It's Henry Winkler,
Oh, Henry
and
Winkler's in that?
yeah, he was the king of Bacchus ages ago, years ago. But he's one of my older Mardi Gras kings. Yeah, I got John Goodman is in it. Luke Perry from Beverly Hills 90210.
Oh,
He passed away a few
yeah,
years.
I remember.
Um, who else? Like John C. Riley's in it, Andy Garcia. It's got a great cast. But beyond the actors, because that's just one facet of it, it's the I got a lot of great musicians. Aaron Neville's in it. He grew up in New Orleans.
Really? Oh, that's
Went
awesome.
Wynton Marsalis is in it, and He's got a lot of history in New Orleans, obviously, with the family. Jason Marcellus is in it. Huey Lewis, who's from San Francisco, but he was the head of, one year he served as the monarch of Endymion, the crew of Endymion. But, you know, from Huey Lewis in the news. But outside of the musicians and actors, it's got a lot of the local appeal also, like former like city councilwoman Jackie Clarkson, like I mentioned, former Governor Edwin Edwards, and a lot of the crew captains like Sonny Bory from Orpheus, Clark Brennan from the crew of Bacchus, former Rex. If there's nothing else you remember from this interview, take one thing. Like they always bring in these outsiders to be the captain or the king, let's say, of Bacchus, Bacchus, the king of Endymion, the king of Orpheus, and all the parades are named after former like ancient Greek gods or Egyptian gods. Or but the major parade, which is the crew of Rex, and on Mardi Gras Day they have Rex and Zulu, and whoever serves as the king of Rex is the king of all of Mardi Gras, not just the parade, but all of Mardi Gras, right? And Mardi Gras is not just a day, it's a season. It starts on King's Day. It starts like January 6th, and it can go for 6 to 9 weeks. But that's based on the Easter.
Lent and all that, right? Something to do with that.
And I have a scene dedicated to that. It's based on the lunar cycle and all that. But anyway, the nice thing is for Rex, the king of Rex is always a local. So they find a prominent or a person in New Orleans that has, you know, done something community type oriented, you know, person and puts them in there as that role. So that's one tradition they've stuck with over the years. And I always thought there was something nice about that.
That's great. Well, I'm going to let you go because I have to get going to a dinner. So I wanted to say thank you so much. And I'll have you back once you pass the bar. Take care. I'll see you later.
All right. Nice talking with you. Take care.